It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, November 14th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that thinks we're going to be talking a lot about special teams today.
You think?
We shall. All right, let's get the show going.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You'll keep up to date with all our episodes and Flyers news. You can also email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Today, we are going to talk about the weekend games against Ottawa and Dallas, the return of Claude Giroux, and it is a Monday, so we will have our Nemesis of the week. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we are over on YouTube, so subscribe there as well. Russ, one of the things that you have said over and over again is that you are worried about Wade Allison. He got hurt on Saturday, and supposedly it's not so bad, and that he should be returning soon. But I think, hopefully we'll find out today or sometime tomorrow.
The issue is, even if he's returning soon, this is again that area where he always has problems. And so the problem is like, how many games can he really play this year? That's, he hasn't played over 40 in, I told you, like 5-6 years, whatever it is. And, he was on a pretty good roll there, and now he's got this slight injury, and who knows? I mean, this could be a situation where it's sort of like this nagging thing that happens to him every year. And this was a situation where I had brought up to you that maybe at some point the organization is going to have to, cut bait with him simply because he can't stay healthy. Because while he's in there, he's good. But the problem is the Flyers suffer when he's not. And then you have to sort of fill in for him, and you're hoping he's coming back. Like, at some point, you can't do it anymore. And I don't know if it's going to be after this year or not. But I told you I was on the fence for bringing him in this year simply because of availability.
Yeah, I mean, you are right that he's been one of the bigger contributors to the team this season so far, and they are definitely worse without him. Kiefer Bellows, I think, did his best when he came in on Sunday, but I don't think is anywhere near as impactful as Wade Allison is.
No, but he's got to play regularly too, right? I mean,
yeah. So I don't know. We'll see how that progresses. But in the meantime, we got to start with the return of Claude Giroux on Saturday. And man, they put out the mic'd up that he did for the 1000th game ahead of time. I don't know if that was strategically like brilliant or stupid, because I think all of us were just absolutely devastated by that video. I think that going into it, I wanted to be more like positive, like hopeful, thank you. But then watching him cry and say like, I love you guys. Oh, dagger, absolute dagger. But I see both sides, but it was rough.
It was going to be bittersweet no matter what they did. I think it was, smart that the Flyers did it because it showed that side of them. It still didn't stop some of local sports talk radio for kind of saying that he never won anything and who the hell is he? And that unfortunately is going to follow him.
For shame.
But they're going to do it. And the writers don't do it and the fans won't do it. Well, there's some fans, but most don't. But sports radio, for whatever reason, still, almost blames him for like his complete time here for not winning a Stanley Cup. Like one guy can do it.
Yeah, just the kind of guy that he is, like, that that's just uncalled for. I did appreciate everything they did at the game. I thought
Mhm.
it was really lovely. That tribute video was wonderful. The standing ovation the crowd gave him, it was very extended and very loud, and
It's what you
lots
would
of,
expect.
yeah, lots of Rue chants as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
which, good feelings about all of that. Amazing signs at warm-ups, across the board.
Mhm.
And I think overall, just, outcome of the game aside, I think it was just, it went as well as it absolutely could have. And I was really happy in the end.
Yeah, no question. But I did know, and I mentioned it on the last show, that he would be more impactful in this game than even last game, and he was. That's just the way he is. He is able to, he's one of those athletes that can block all this stuff out, and he does a good job of it. And I give him credit. At this point, though, now you have to move on. Like it's like next time he comes in, you can't worry about it.
Right, right. But I feel like this was a little bit of closure that maybe he
Yes.
didn't get the last time around. And so I feel really good about it. Now,
Yeah,
the
I do
games
too.
themselves from this weekend,
Oof.
uh, yeah, I think obviously said it at the top of the show. It is 100% clear that the problem in both of these games this past weekend was special teams. If you look at the numbers and for the eye test, honestly, 5 on 5, they absolutely outplayed Ottawa, and I think played evenly with Dallas.
I don't know if they played evenly with Dallas, but look, it's easy to point to special teams and say, well, if you don't score on a power play and you can't stop the penalty on the penalty kill, you're not going to win. But there's other problems going on here. And the other problems are the coaching staff has to teach these young players. You can't expect Kiefer Bellows to come in cold and expect him, like you said, to fill in for Wade Allison. You can't expect, Morgan Frost to move around, not get offensive zone starts, and give you his best offense while he's playing great away from the puck. What this coaching staff and John has to understand is you may have a standard, and I've said it before, but you don't have all the guys to play it this way. And so it's not going to magically turn around and change because you've sent down 3 or 4 young guys and you've brought up 3 or 4 veterans. It's not going to work that way. This team has to get 2 or 3 of these young guys to move on to the team next year in better shape than they were this year. If not, Tortorella is going to have the same problems next year because the cap is not going to be much better. And that's, I think, the part that John's missing. And so, like, when he's saying, throwing out the barbs that he did after the Dallas game, listen, people have a right to say what they see. And right now, what they see is inconsistency for
I
scoring.
think Yeah, I think that's fair. I just think it was blatantly obvious that special teams were the
Yeah.
biggest problem
And
this
how do you
past
fix that?
weekend. And that is a combination of coaching and systems,
Yeah.
and then it's on the players to execute. And
Yes.
I feel like that, especially in the Dallas game where the Flyers were 0 for 6 on the power play, and including a failed 5-on-3, they had 9 shots on goal total in the power play that game, over 6 power plays. Like, that's just not gonna get you where you wanna go.
No.
The thing that we've been harping on this season is that the Flyers are gonna have to be a team that takes advantage of other people's mistakes.
Yes.
And because of their special teams work this past weekend, they did not do that. And so, again, the PK didn't help them either. They've been really solid on the PK, and while they haven't been, blowing people out of the water on the power play, they've gotten power play goals, but it's
Mhm.
starting to dry up a
It
little
is
bit here.
on both sides of it.
Yeah, and I think that part of it is the teams are adjusting, they're getting, more attuned to their timing and chemistry, and so things that were working for the Flyers aren't necessarily gonna work if the Flyers don't keep up with that chemistry. And you can see that they have the chances to do it. It just goes to show you with the goal that they scored against Dallas. I mean, that was a beautiful play. So they have the
Mhm.
skills to do it. It's just, are they doing it at the right time?
Well, yeah, they have enough personnel. I don't want to hear the excuse of guys being injured. They have enough personnel to be able to score on power plays. It is all about system, and it is about practicing it, and it is about knowing where everybody's going to be and how they're going to do it. And right now they're out of sync. And the only way you get back in sync is by practicing it. I mean, that's it. It doesn't just all magically return unless you have a team that's been together, like let's say maybe like the Pittsburgh Penguins, where like Letang, Crosby, whatever. Those guys know each other so well, Malkin, that they could literally put it together after failing 10 times in a row. But this team can't, because this team, it's early in their genesis, and they haven't really gotten the consistency going. And that's the thing. There was consistency early in the year, and now there's not. And just putting in the effort, we talked about Ottawa was going to be a pretty desperate team. And, we'll get more into that. But the idea is you're not always going to play with the most desperation. And as the season moves on, that is definitely going to be true. They came out of the gate hard that way, but now maintaining that is going to be difficult.
Well, we certainly have a lot more to talk about related to this, and we will do that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. Did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike nationally? That's why our friends at Simply Safe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. You can order a Simply Safe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and peace of mind this holiday season. And their advanced technology is what I love the most. I can control the system from my phone with their app. I can watch an HD live stream from any of the security cameras or monitor the wide variety of high-tech sensors in every room. Plus, if there's an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use their Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify that a threat is real. You can get a priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Check out Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, you can go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports today, available wherever you get your podcasts. Russ, I want to continue that conversation because you mentioned consistency. And I think that that is part of it, right? Where, like I said, I feel like other teams are catching up with their chemistry and,
Mhm.
getting things tighter. So it's harder for the Flyers to take advantage of things, but we know that they can do it. And we've seen it. And more recently in the game against St. Louis, that's exactly what they did. That was their most complete game of the season
Right.
so far, I would say, and that it just kind of fell apart a little bit against Ottawa and Dallas, which I think both of those games were winnable games, right? I think that
Well,
if they
Ottawa
had,
more than Dallas. I'm not sure Dallas was a winnable one, but Ottawa
well,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, Pavelski had a great game too, but I think that I really think that if they had gotten the little things together and, especially in the Dallas game, I saw a little bit of that giving up at the end,
Oh yeah.
like we saw last year, and they cannot do that. Like, even if
After the
you're,
shorthanded goal, I think
yeah,
that started to happen.
yeah, and I think that's the kind of thing to be worried about. Like, ultimately, losing the game isn't what you worry about. You worry about how they lose and what they look like doing it. And, if you think there's something to carry over positively to the next game. And with the Ottawa game, I thought there maybe was, but then with the Dallas game, there wasn't. And that's what worried me.
Right. So with the Ottawa game, you can't be a team uh, overrun by emotion. So here's something that I'm passionate about. So All right, so Travis Konecny gets into a fight with Bernard Docker, and like on the radio, they're like, "Hey, this is great. Konecny beat up a bigger guy." Okay, great. So he's off for 5 minutes. That's your top line right winger. He's your top scorer. He's now in the box for 5 minutes. Then inexplicably, Tony DeAngelo gets into a fight a few minutes later, and he's out for 5 minutes. Okay, well, with those two guys out, Ottawa scores and ties up the game. No big thing there. You knew that was coming. But then on the power play, Konechny's not available for half the power play because he's still out for fighting, and DeAngelo is not available at all for the power play. So now Provorov has to be on the power play, and it's all out of sync. And it's just like your top line winger, your best scorer, and your top pairing defenseman were all out because of fighting. How does that make any sense?
Well, I thought it was interesting because it actually, once again, made me think of the St. Louis game where they looked at what St. Louis did, lost, and said, maybe we should do that in our next game. Like, it didn't make sense to me, just
Right.
seeing as that they had just seen a team do that
Right.
unsuccessfully.
Right.
I think that's part of it as well. But I just think that, they have to put more pieces together, that there are some good pieces there. They just need more
Absolutely.
of them to come together in games like these that ultimately I think, and I still think the Dallas game was winnable if they put more of those pieces together. And you look at something like hitting, right? And I think one of the reason why they dominated 5-on-5 versus Ottawa, they had 59 hits. That's
Sure.
absolutely bonkers.
It
It's like
is.
they said it was the ninth most in regular season NHL history.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why Ottawa couldn't really get much going
No, and I think
offensively
that's
until
fair.
they were on the power play. And so that's good, but they have to be smart about it. They have to choose their hits and make sure that the puck is retrievable. And that's what I'm saying when I'm saying put more pieces together. Like,
Mhm.
take the good that they have and build on it.
Right, but they weren't going to be able to use that against Dallas. We talked about this. Dallas is big and strong and fast. And so hitting doesn't matter to Dallas because they have just as many guys that will go around you and score a goal too. And that is something that the Flyers had trouble with because this, was a game where they couldn't just out physical a team and they couldn't just outwork the team. And this was a game where, you know what? They actually had to score. Like literally, they had to score. They had to score 5-on-5. Jake Ottinger's a terrific goalie, but they had their chances, and you have to take advantage of those chances. Even Owen Tippett, who's clearly playing better, he hits another post. It's like all of these things have to change if the team's going to get better. And a team like Dallas, this was the kind of game where they came in, and by the middle of the second period, they knew they were going to win.
Yeah, I do think so. I will say Cam Talbot had a pretty good game
He did.
for
No, Cam
Ottawa
Talbot
as
was
well.
excellent. No question.
Yeah, so I think they also ran into some really solid goaltending in both games, but at the same time, you have to figure out a way around that. And I think you're right about Owen Tippett. I mean, I think he was the standout player of the weekend for
Mm-hmm.
me. He earned that spot on the top line with
Mm-hmm.
adjustments due to the Allison injury. Should he be there permanently at this point? Probably not. But I think that he absolutely earned the right based on his recent play to get
Yeah.
that opportunity, and I think he took full advantage of it in terms of, making plays, trying to spark offense. Again, I thought he had some really good passes, some really good vision, as well as, taking the shots. So there's that. And I think Travis Konecny, now, we talked about taking that fighting major, which was maybe not a good choice,
And
but he
one
did.
other thing about the fighting major. So on the radio, when he was on the power play, they're like, wow, he's really tentative on this power play. And it's like, yeah, because he probably screwed up his hand a little bit. Every time you punch someone in the face, you're screwing up your hand. And he's a scorer. You don't want to do that too many times.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but he also drew 2 penalties against
Yes,
Dallas.
which is
That,
good.
the assist he had in the Ottawa game was lovely. The goal he had, versus Dallas, like I said earlier, that passing
Yeah.
sequence was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
It
Oh, yeah.
led to that goal, and his shot was beautiful. So, I think there's these moments where they put stuff together in a really positive way, And I think that that's where the disconnect you're talking about is, in terms of the coaches taking those pieces and putting them together in a way that gives them a better chance to win.
There's another disconnect too. The other disconnect is now there's a definite refusal to call up guys from Lehigh. They're not doing it. They're going to use what they have, and this is typical Torts 101. And so we'll just move Zach McEwen up on the third line, and he'll just score. He'll just do better. And it's like, no, call somebody up from Lehigh who looks good, like Ali Lixel or somebody like that, and give them a chance. That's who you put on the third line. That's where you look to get some chemistry and extra scoring from. You already know what some of the other guys can and cannot do on this team based on their history and just even the amount of games you've played already this season. And again, even it just, Sedlak's played fine, right? But again, he scored 3 goals early, and he probably won't get 3 more goals for, half a season, because that's, he's just a decent player. But they're elevating him instead of trying to, call up somebody who's maybe earned a reward instead of the player there who, like, you didn't pick up him to become a third liner for you for the next 5 years. If you did, then something's wrong with the game plan. And that's where I think the coaching staff is failing on this one.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, teaser for tomorrow's show when we talk about the Phantoms. I think there were some interesting things on that front to come out of their weekend that they had. And there are some options for call up, but there are arguments to not do it as well. So we will be absolutely talking through that on tomorrow's show. But I do think that it is a problem when you're just moving guys up who aren't designed to play up,
Right.
because of having to do it.
Right.
Right. And that, you look at a guy like Owen Tippett, he's a guy you do move up because he is one of those guys that
Correct.
you want to reward with moving up, because he does have the skill and should be able to eventually get there.
Yeah.
But Sedlak, you're right. He's a third line guy tops. McEwen is a fourth liner. We know who these guys are. And I think that eventually they're going to have to start calling the guys up. Whether now is the right moment to do so, I think is up for debate. And like I said, we will do that tomorrow. But up next, we are going to talk about our nemesis of the week.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer, esports, and of course the NHL. We've got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts like ours, you could find those on BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So if you are newer to Locked On Flyers, each and every Monday on the show, we look at the calendar upcoming and think about where we are with the team and say, what is our nemesis? What is bothering us the most in Flyers land? Last week, we talked about winning winnable games and getting Felix Sandstrom a win. Well, we got Felix Sandstrom that win, which was a good thing. The winning winnable games, not so good on that front. But I think that it was a good nemesis to have because it kind of played out the way we thought it could. And I think that, going into next week or this week, we have Columbus again, we have the Bruins, and we have the Habs. And so to me, I think it really is, can these special teams get better to give the Flyers an opportunity to be on the winning side of more of these games. Now, the Bruins are a juggernaut, so I think that's a separate category, but the Flyers should be able to beat Columbus, especially after the last game against them. I think that, if they can tighten things up, maybe the outcome will be different. The Habs are absolutely beatable, and I think they're just going to have to do the thing that I said at the beginning, take advantage of mistakes and figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other nemesis will be stop the narrative about all the injuries and injured players and what you could be, and just talk about what you have and what you could develop and what you might be. Because every team's going to have injuries. If you want to point out to me, Russ, this is the most injured team in the league, well, they might be the most injured team in the league for the next 5 years. Like, it's just, that's sometimes the way it is. You've got to, overcome that. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, this is your job. Your job is to overcome that. Your job is to develop players, bring up players, get them in there, start getting them on track for the next few years so that you can get better. Otherwise, you just, you'll be stuck in the mud. So that's my nemesis, is to hear about that a couple of times on every broadcast, because it's like, we're aware of who's hurt here. Like, everybody is aware of it, but you can't dwell on that.
I think it's hard to some degree. One of my nemesis, honestly, in general, is when I'm forced to watch a national broadcast instead of the local one due
Oh,
to
yeah.
NHL Network spotlighting a game. But they don't talk about the same kind of things, and they buy, and the national broadcasts do this. They buy into general narratives because
Yes.
that's the information that they have, and so I get it to a large degree, but at the same time, sometimes you need the nuance of the local commentators.
Mm-hmm.
And I was missing that this weekend. So I totally understand what you mean by making sure that we're talking about the right narratives this
Yes.
season, and that they're the ones that we have to work with. And I think that is a great spot to end on, is like, let's work with what we have and not
Yep.
we wish we had.
Yep. Agreed.
So wrapping up with our Flyers fun thing, I didn't realize this until the Flyers posted about it, but they had Zack Hill read
Yeah.
the starting lineup
I love it.
versus Dallas. That's such a great honor for him. I would call him the PR chief emeritus. So he's still around, but on his way to retirement.
Yeah, he's the best. I mean, I just can't tell you how many good things he's done for me in my career. So, yeah, just a great guy.
Absolutely second to none. And, all the content and images that come out of that department are absolutely spectacular. So good to see
Yep.
him get that honor. That'll do it for today's show. We'll be back again tomorrow with how they can win against Columbus this time. And like I said, we're going to check in with the Phantoms and talk about what they're doing there and what that means for potential call-ups. And the 2 games they played this weekend, I think, provide some clues on that front.
Mm-hmm.
So excited to talk to you about that. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you've got mailbag questions, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. Plus, you can post over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and their take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.